All right, welcome everybody. Good afternoon for everybody who is in the US time zones, and good evening or good morning, depending on the global time zones you're in. This is our September edition of Enterprise Agility Meetup. As you guys know, we are a global group. We were primarily based out of the San Francisco Bay Area before the pandemic. We went virtual and global after the pandemic, and it has actually increased the interest as well as the number of membership in this group. And we usually have at least one, if not more than about two major presentations by industry leaders, authors, experienced leaders across the board on Enterprise Agile. And the group, as you guys know, is consisting of product managers, program managers, scrum masters, engineering managers, coaches, change leaders, etc., across the spectrum, from people who are just getting into the industry to people who have written books like Ron here and many others. So we want to welcome you to the September edition of Enterprise Agile. Just a couple of admin items, please go on mute. This is a small group, so you'll get a chance to ask questions. And the other thing is this is being recorded, and we'll post this in our YouTube channel in a few days as well. So thank you. I want to hand this over to Ron to introduce our esteemed host, our esteemed presenter today.
Great. Thanks, Gopal. So I became aware of Sally Elatta when we were both speakers at Agile Camp Northwest in Portland 3 years ago. But I didn't get a chance to hear her until a webinar a year ago, March, that Corona organization was putting on, where I found her presentation passionate and authentic and caring and focused on how important it is to be a servant leader, to have a good, solid team. I thought it was not a surprise that she resonated for me, given our mutual Iowa connection. So some of you know that I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and she did college an hour south of where I grew up in Iowa, and then crossed the Missouri River to Omaha to get her bachelor's in IT. And her talk that I listened to made me want to tune in whenever I had the opportunity to hear her, and it made me really want to invite her to speak for us. Sally's been a J2EE instructor, a senior software developer, a web architect, and then a decade and a half ago, an Agile coach. And she founded and is CEO of AgilityHealth, and has become truly a thought leader in enterprise business agility and measurement. So Sally, turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Ron. I really appreciate it. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay, great. Let me just see if I can switch over. All right, everybody can hear me okay? Thumbs up. Thank you for this invitation. I'm so excited to talk to your group. When Ron reached out and said it's going to be about enterprise agile or enterprise agility, I'm like, yes, he signed me up. Anything that's about scaling agility and taking it to the next level and thinking beyond what do our teams need is definitely something that I'm interested in. So thank you so much again for the invitation. Let me share my screen and then we will get started. All right, let me know if everybody can see my slides.
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So what we're going to talk about today is, what does enterprise business agility look like beyond teams, and what does the journey look like to go there? And of course, many of you that already know who I am know that I'm very passionate about measurement and metrics and using continuous improvement as a way of scaling the transformation. A little bit about myself. I founded the company, and believe it or not, the name of the original company is Agile Transformation Incorporated, about 12 years ago. I've changed the name about 3 years ago to Agility Health because I believe strongly that it's not about Agile anymore, that it's about business agility. So I felt so strongly about that that I actually changed the name of our company to Agility Health. My background is, as Ron mentioned, I come from a technical background. I was a software engineer and architect for many years. And then I really fell in love with organizational transformation and how do you bring real enterprise transformation to large enterprises. And so what we are known for would probably be our Agility Health platform, which is more of our measurement side. agilevideos.com is our e-learning platform. It's the largest right now. We have over 300 videos. And then EBA, Enterprise Business Agility, which is the 7 pillars. I'm also the founder of Sudan the Next Gen. It's a nonprofit organization. I'm originally from Sudan in Africa, and I've really been passionate about how can we take our skills in organizational transformation and apply it to nations that are trying to develop. Sudan, my home country, has gone through a recent revolution 2 years ago. And a lot of the young people went out to the streets in the millions and they said enough of dictatorship. And they actually brought down a dictator through peaceful protest. And it's very hard to see something like that happen and to not want to get involved. And so of course I stuck my foot into it, and I'm very involved in the transformation for that country. So anybody that wants to talk nonprofit on the side and how can we make social impact, talk to me for sure. So what I wanted to start with is an activity. I think many of you guys know how to use Slido. So please take out your phone and go to slido.com using your mobile phone. And slido.com is going to ask you to enter in a number, and that magic number is 62257. 62257. Slido.com 62257. And then the question that's going to be in front of you is, what does business agility mean to you? So again, I'm not asking about Agile. Notice the question. I'm not saying what does Agile mean to you. I'm saying when I tell you your organization has achieved business agility, what am I saying? What does that mean to you? Go ahead and submit some of your answers here. Slido.com 62257. And then give us your answers to this poll. Wonderful. Flexibility has come up twice. Adaptability. Flexible again. Responding to ever-changing customer needs. Better visibility. Love it. Adaptability. Enterprise agility. Ability to change as market changes. So notice there's some common themes that are emerging here. Nimbleness, emergence, evolution. I like that, right? So it's nimbleness, emergence, evolution. Aligned ability to be responsive. Very good. Any new ones? Ability to change at market needs. Okay, we're starting. Oh, strategic alignment. That's a good one. Ooh, I love this one. And everyone is a leader. So when we really achieve true business agility, everyone is a leader. Love that. Okay, great. It's very much aligned. So let's go back over here. What does business agility mean to you? We've done this exercise a million times. So the answers are very similar. So this definition is something that I created several years ago and got the blessing of Evan Laybourne, the founder of the Business Agility Institute. And it is the ability, business agility is the ability to adapt to change, which you guys mentioned a lot. Learn and pivot. Deliver at speed and thrive in a competitive market, because gone are the days where large companies eat the small. Today, fast companies eat the slow, and your company's ability to outlearn your competition and outdeliver your competition might be the only sustainable advantage. In the previous history, it was the size of the organization. It was how many customers they had today. It was all the leverage and the money they got in the bank. Today, that doesn't save you. What saves you is your ability to out-deliver your competition and be very close to your customer and learn and pivot and be nimble. So that very much, this definition came from a lot of these same exercises of asking people, what does business agility mean to you from a leadership perspective? So what I want to ask you next is, what are the challenges that are impeding your own organization from achieving business agility? and specifically delivering on their strategic outcomes. A company every year and every 3 years, they come up with their strategic outcomes. They say, in order for us to win in the market, we have to do X, Y, and Z. We have to become ABC. We have to create XYZ strategy in the market. And these are the outcomes that we desire at a very high level. But then when they come to execution, it begins to fall apart. So what I'd like to ask you for now is, let's go to the next question and activate that. Let's see over here, 1 second. Let me make sure I can activate that for you. I think I have to go back over here. And you should see the new question now. What are the top challenges enterprises face with delivering on their strategic outcomes? I'd love to hear your voice here. Think about your own company. Think about your customers if you're a consultant. What's getting in their way? I have a strategy. I have a vision. I've got big plans, but I can't get them done. Their own culture. Leadership. Interesting that you guys immediately started with culture and leadership. I like. What else? Wrong guesses. Top-down mentality. Don't have data to make decisions, so lack of data. Scaling a sustainable solution. So they come up with a solution, but they don't know how to scale it. Good. Keep it coming. What else gets in their way? And you started with culture and leadership, so that's a big deal. Data, as in the digital transfer, got it. So from a digital perspective, they're not leveraging data and they're not enabling digital experiences. Alignment. We're going to talk a lot about alignment today. Managers telling the experts what to do. Tell us more. Fear, alignment across the organization, lack of alignment across the organization. And today we're going to talk about outcome-based alignment and how that's a very big gap today, because there's a lot more output and project-based alignment and deliverable and not outcome-based alignment. Okay, great. Leadership failing to communicate the goals. Okay, we're very aligned on the problem. So what I wanted to do before we get deeper into this is play you a video that is a very popular video for us that is an explainer of business agility. And then I'm going to pause and then I'm going to ask you guys to get off mute. And then we're going to reflect on this video. Then I'm going to go into some of the content that I have for you today. So let's go into the video, which is the Business Agility Explainer. And I hope everybody can hear it okay. 1 second, expand and play. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear.
Hi, I'm Sally Elatta, founder of AgilityHealth. And here at AgilityHealth, we are very passionate about accelerating our customers' enterprise business agility journey by helping them measure what matters. As we've worked with many customers, we're starting to see some common challenges and common patterns and solutions. So what I wanted to do is just draw this picture for you. Let's call this demand and capacity. Let's look at it from this perspective. On the demand side, the first challenge you're going to hear from customers and enterprises is enterprise planning is painful. There is too much focus on work and output. So you'll see lots of initiatives, deliverables, epic stories, but not a lot of focus on outcomes. You'll also see that there's many competing business priorities that are coming in through silos, and everybody feels like their priority is number one. Another challenge is there's no discovery or validation of the ideas, and there's a lot of idea generators, multiple people with lots of great ideas. The problem that this causes is many of these ideas are actually duplicate. So you could have Joe and Adam and Jamie over here all asking for the same thing, but in different ways. As you go down through this funnel, you're going to realize that teams are not designed to optimize the flow of value. Teams today are all organized based on who reports to who. And so in order for you to get anything done, there's a lot of bottlenecks. There's a lot of shared service teams that are really over capacity. And there's a lot of handoffs and dependencies between them. As you come closer to the actual teams that get the work done, what you're going to see is they're overwhelmed. Teams are burning out. they will tell you they are buried in never-ending backlogs. The good news is by using Agile, we've started to organize our work a little bit better. So we have backlogs and we have cadences and we plan well, but it's still never ending. Teams have no time to be creative or to solve problems the right way. Like, remember those 3 different features that we're all asking for the same thing? Nobody has time to focus on that. So this is a summary of some of the problems that we're seeing. And one of my quotes here that customers like is, if you want flow, stop the flooding. So let's take a look at this picture in a different way. How could we redraw this? Again, let's look at demand, discovery, and then let's flow outcomes. So this funnel looks a little bit different in that at the beginning, I want to create portfolio teams. This is a missing gap that we have today. We built teams and we built teams of teams, but we have not yet structured portfolio management teams that could really organize the work at the very top of the funnel. Portfolio teams really should be planning based on outcomes. What are my 3-year outcomes? What are my 1-year outcomes? And what are my quarterly outcomes? Those 1-year outcomes will map to your initiatives and your epics, and those quarterly outcomes will map to your deliverables or your features. Make sure that these outcomes, as they come into this funnel, are going through discovery. The purpose of discovery is to validate your ideas before you invest a lot in actually delivering them. Are these ideas valuable? Are they feasible? Are they usable? Another way to think about the value of discovery is, can we test something? We call it test it, nail it, before we scale it. Test it, nail it, scale it. Some cool techniques for doing discovery would be following the Mobius loop by doing discovery and then delivering, or even leveraging things like the 5-day sprint, or just building some fun mock-ups and showing them to customers quickly and getting very rapid feedback so that you can begin to experiment before you actually build. Now let's come into the teams. How do I want to organize and design my teams? I want to organize my teams so they can flow outcomes. So whether they're business teams or technology teams, whether they're product or engineering teams, and regardless of their reporting structure, we want to organize teams together in a virtual way so they can enable the flow of outcomes. To support this system that is designed to flow outcomes, at the very top, we need leadership agility. We need to shift from the very directive style that we have today into more of enabling autonomy and delegating decisions down. We need to also invest in developing talent, because through this journey, you're going to see there's a lot of new roles that are going to be created, and a lot of roles that are today will need to shift, including the role of leaders. So developing talent and investing in growing our skills is another critical enabler. And when you enable the flow of outcomes across your enterprise, you will arrive at true business agility, where you are disrupting before you are disrupted. You become a learning organization and you can thrive in a competitive market. Thank you for watching.
All right. So let me stop sharing my screen and let me come back to all of you here. Feel free to turn on your video. I'd love your reflections on this video that you just watched. What resonated with you? What is similar to what you're experiencing within your own company? Feedback. And feel free to just unmute yourself if you want to speak. I think everybody has access to do that. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Talk to me, Agile. You're not shy people. Go ahead.
I would say the key is flow, and as a key word is, how do you optimize flow? And I agree with everything you just said. One of the biggest challenges is too much work in progress getting launched all simultaneously.
Absolutely. Focusing on flow of value, Ryan is sharing, and it's way too much whip right now, which impedes flow. So if you stop flow, if you want flow, do you guys remember the quote? If you want flow,
Stop the flooding.
stop the flooding. There you go. All right, awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Who else would like to share?
I guess maybe I have more of a question and observation.
Sure.
So what you talked about and how to organize flow, it feels a lot about how you structure your work and how you structure your team differently to enable the flow. But I guess my question is, how do you change the culture, and especially in the leadership, in senior leadership groups, where quite often impediments come from there.
Yeah, structuring the teams, Elena, is one of the things you need to do. Transforming leaders is one of the things. So what I'm going to go next with is this puzzle that I just showed you in 5 minutes around enabling enterprise business agility is very complex, and it's a multi-year journey. And we have to focus on a lot of different things moving together. I call them gears, because there's a lot of capabilities an organization has to do. And we sometimes, as coaches and consultants, to be honest, sometimes only focus on the delivery optimization of Agile and of SAFe and Scrum and just the methodology that we're rolling out. And I don't think we pay enough attention to the rest of the enterprise capabilities that need to be built. One of them being leadership agility, another one being organizational and team design, another one being customer seat at the table and innovation and product design. There's other things that we need to look at. So that's where I'm going to go next. So there's not one of these things that's going to be the magic sauce. It's a combination of all of them together. Good question. Any other comments or reflection before I keep going?
Yeah, well, I'll throw in one that I threw in to one of your earlier questions. We picked the wrong thing, and so I really liked seeing the, let's try and experiment, let's test that, let's find out that we've got the right thing before we build it.
Test it, nail it before you scale it. Test it, nail it, scale it. Because so many large enterprises, they think of an idea, a portal, something, whatever it is. And all of us know it's a hypothesis. You're just hypothesizing that that idea is going to solve your bigger problem. So immediately spending, $10 million on it and putting a 3-year roadmap for it and building the big thing before you've even tested to validate, like Ron said, that this is even going to work is waste. Derek, I see you came on video. Do you want to share anything with us? You're on mute.
I'm not used to Zoom anyway. Not yet, but okay. I thought I might.
Thank you. I appreciate you showing up on video. That's awesome. I'm going to challenge everybody towards the end of this that we're all going to show up on Zoom and just say hello. Okay, great. So let me share my screen again and I'll continue if there's no more comments or questions. I just wanted to reflect on that video because it's a very good executive level explainer. And Jenny, if you don't mind just sending a link to this, if any of you guys want to play that to any of your executives, feel free to reuse it. So what does the journey look like towards business agility? It's multiple steps. And I will say that a lot of companies start with focusing on team agility, and that's one of the gears, as I call them. And so what do you do when you're at the beginning of that journey? You're implementing Scrum, Agile, Kanban. You are creating cross-functional teams. You're co-locating them together or now making them work virtually. You're bringing in all the right Agile tools, Jira, Rally, version 1. I've got to build the foundation. You're making sure the teams are stable. Hopefully you are. And they're not just project teams, that they're persistent, stable teams. That's kind of like the basics. You're giving them some training and coaching, but you're really trying to stand up strong teams that can deliver predictably. And that becomes your focus for team agility. And so what do we recommend that you do to strengthen that is definitely you want to start measuring the health of those teams. You want to basically create that culture of continuous improvement, measure and grow. You want to enable self-learning because it's pretty clear to us that you're not going to have one coach for every team. So you want to create a culture where teams can learn on their own and develop. And you want to start looking at talent development, specifically around the roles of Scrum Master, product owner, and maybe even some of the team member skills that are missing, such as like data and data scientists and some of the emerging roles at the team level. At the team level, the goal becomes scaling. How am I going to plan at scale? How am I going to deliver at scale? How am I going to manage dependencies at scale? I've got a program, I've got a product line, and it's got multiple teams in it. And that is where everybody starts fighting about their favorite scaling method or framework. But you need something. You need a way to scale planning, to scale delivery. DevOps becomes a priority here as well, because you start to realize from an engineering perspective, we have to have a lot more maturity, a lot more automation, continuous delivery, and technical agility. and especially from in a world that's companies are moving to a digital, right? They might be wanting to move to the cloud. Everybody's moving to the cloud right now, finally catching up with that. They're trying to build APIs, they're trying to publish APIs. So how can you look holistically at your technical agility and give that the same weight, if not higher even? And then you've got leadership agility. So why does this become a priority at the team levels? Because managers, now that a manager, you've got an entire program, an entire product line that's all moved to Agile, you can't have managers using their old command and control. Let me tell you what to do every day. Let me solve, every day's problems. Let me move people around. That all has shifted. We was just talking to Ron about this, but some managers have been disrupted. Their role is completely different than what it was before. So beginning to shift managers and bringing them on that journey becomes a priority when you're focusing on team of team. Many companies are now focusing on org agility. I would say that over the last 6, 7, 8 years, 10 years, you've seen a lot of team agility, a lot of team agility focus. But almost everybody that you talk to over the past 2 years, and I would say in the next 2 years even coming, has been about, we got to shift from project management to product management. We don't have product managers. That discipline of product discovery doesn't exist. Our product owners are not aligned. Portfolio management, we're not doing outcome-based planning. We're not doing quarterly planning. We still do yearly planning. Value stream structure and designing teams the right way, as we talked about in that video. How can I align teams regardless of reporting structure in a virtual way? I don't care who reports to who, but how can I align teams to the actual value that they need to deliver? And maybe even change that dynamically every year. A lot of people think that once you do your team design, it's going to be a once and done. I would argue that on a yearly basis, as you change your outcomes, you might want to dynamically alter the design of which teams need to work with which teams to better align to outcomes for that year. And then, of course, everybody is doing a digital transformation and really rethinking, relooking at their business model to see how are they going to enable more of a digital experience with their customer? How are they going to move so many of their systems to the cloud? Which systems are going to sunset? Are they going to invest in machine learning, in AI, in monetizing their data? So there's a ton of that going on, and that is, I would say, a big priority. And then you go into operational agility, and operational agility is where you realize the rest of the business needs to come on board, whether it's HR or talent development or finance or legal or sales or marketing. And I'm not saying that these people only come to the journey at this time, because I bet you when you were doing portfolio management, you had to go talk to the finance people because of all the lean budgeting and the new ways of budgeting. And HR is definitely getting wind of all of this. And some companies, HR is starting to lead some of these talent development efforts. But it becomes quite real in that I'm not going to be able to achieve enterprise agility at scale if I don't have all of these pieces to the puzzle coming together, right? So that's the journey that I wanted to share with you. And in this journey, to achieve this enterprise business agility, which is anticipating customers' needs, disrupting before being disrupted, and being a learning organization, what do I need to do and how do I measure my success? When people say bottom line, how do you know that this journey has succeeded? What are the outcomes I'm trying to get out of it? I basically say flow, value, quality, and happiness. And I think that also matches what Jonathan Smart has in the book, Better, Faster, what is it? You guys remind me of the name of the book.
Sooner, Safer, Happier.
Sooner, Safer, Happier. Thank you, Maru. Sooner, Safer, Happier. There's a lot of alignment around flow, which is sooner, value, quality, and then happiness for the teams as the 4 outcomes of a business agility transformation or enterprise business agility transformation. So think about those and think about aligning all of your metrics to those 4: flow, value, quality, happiness. But in terms of what are the metrics that you should be measuring and what type of metrics, there's also 3: maturity, performance, and outcomes. And we'll talk a lot more about that. Maturity is qualitative, performance is quantitative, outcomes are OKRs. So I want to take you a little bit deeper, and then I'm going to pause and get some questions, but I'm going to go here because I can get a bigger version of this that we can dig into a little bit. So what are those 7 areas that you have to invest in order for you to transform? Remember that big picture, that video that you just saw. There's a lot of stuff going on over there. Yes, it's done in a simple way, but one of the main areas of investment and capability that you have to build is customer seat at the table. Customer seat at the table is getting that capability and that muscle for understanding the customer and their persona and their journey, doing product discovery and product validation one iteration ahead of the teams, or one PI or one quarter, whatever you are using to execute. But you need to be ahead of the teams doing product discovery. And there is strategic discovery, and then there's almost at the delivery level, there's still continuous discovery. But that whole muscle of discovery, and I'm not talking about 6 months of customer interviews and then ta-da, we know what they want, and then we hand it off to the team. That's more of a waterfall approach. We're talking about continuous product discovery, where you are truly a few months ahead of the teams, and then feeding them, and then reflecting on what they're working on and experimenting and learning. Lean portfolio management, I know you guys probably have talked a lot about that in this group, but being outcome oriented, doing quarterly planning and quarterly capacity and demand alignment around outcomes, and then changing your funding models so that you are moving more to stable team and outcome-based funding as opposed to project funding. There's that org structure and design that we talked about earlier, which is I do need to reorganize teams so that they can flow outcomes. I need to look at the roles that have been shifting and changing and have a plan and a change management plan for upskilling them and shifting them. And I need to build internal enablement teams. Some people call them the COEs. But I think we're so focused on Agile that we're not realizing there's a lot of other areas that require enablement. And it's not just Agile. There are some companies that have a DevOps enablement team that upskills the other teams on DevOps, companies that create design thinking and product management enablement teams. So they don't do the work. Their job is to upskill the rest of their portfolio. Leadership and cultural, believe it or not. Definitely outcome-based planning and even org design. All these pillars that you see over here needs enablement, not just Agile. Agile is one of the 7 pillars, and we did this on purpose when we draw this picture for executives so that they don't get confused and think it's the only pillar. It's one of the 7 pillars. It's very important because in order for us to optimize our delivery, we got to apply Agile for technology teams. We need to know how to scale Agile, and we do need to bring agility practices to business teams. When I say business agility to some people, they think I'm talking about Agile for business teams. So they think I'm speaking about an HR team or a finance team using a Kanban board. And they're like, we are business agility. And I just wanted to pause and make sure all of us understood that when I say business agility or enterprise business agility, I'm talking about the whole shebang, the big picture of the transformation, not a business team is using Scrum. Do you guys agree with that? Just let's get some feedback over here. Yes, okay, I'm seeing nonverbal responses. Okay, awesome. Thank you. All right, let's go to leadership and culture. This is where our wonderful, I can't remember your name, but you mentioned this, one of the ladies that was here, I can't see the video anymore, but she said, okay, I get that you need to do org structure and design, but what about the leadership transformation? It's one of the pillars. And I was really happy when you guys brainstormed what the challenges are. You said leadership and culture was the first one. So here it is. Whatever line of business, whatever organization is trying to transform, you have to start from the top and make sure that the VPs, the SVPs, the directors, the leaders, the executives are on this journey of changing the way that they lead. And I'm not just talking about from command and control to servant leadership. I think that's totally awesome. And yes, we got to shift away from the directive, 100%. There's way more, though, that leaders have to learn about leadership agility. It's not just the style. It's not just, definitely empowerment is part of it. But hey, I want to design teams a different way. I need to let go of all of the teams that report to me have to work in the same unit together. My teams might be mixed cross-functionally with other teams that don't report to me to deliver business value. I need to know what the outcomes are that my business partners want and bring my teams closer to business partners and understanding business outcomes. I, as a leader, need to be more strategic and less tactical. I, as a leader, need to take seriously removing obstacles across the team and actually making that one of my backlogs, especially for managers. My backlog is a group of obstacles that those teams have said, and my job is to remove them. And we actually even have managers that are using AgilityHealth. They demo back to the teams what obstacles they removed in the last month or in the last quarter, just like a regular backlog, like the teams have a backlog of features. So there's a lot of work to be done on leadership agility, and I would say we're just scratching the surface. The only good news is digital, agile, business agility is now become a priority for executives. I've done more CEO, CIO presentations than I've ever done in my life because they now get it. Like, this is no longer they actually know that Agile is not just something that teams do anymore. They get that there's a bigger picture, but I will tell you some of them are confused on what needs to change for them. The metrics, the dashboards, the questions they ask, the way that they plan and prioritize, all of that is going to shift. Let's go to Make It Stick. Make It Stick is a pillar that we added several years ago because what we realize is when the consultants leave, organizations don't know how to sustain the change. And in order for them to sustain the change, they have to build internal change agents. They need to continuously measure and grow. And honestly, it's why we built AgilityHealth. And then Agile talent management, which is investing in these key roles and then developing them as quickly as possible internally, because they're the ones that can sustain the team. I've actually even seen companies right now, sorry to share this, but they've moved away from having team level coaches from the outside, and they are building team coaches internally. They're only bringing outside consultants to do a lot more of the program and the portfolio coaching. It's a pattern that I'm sharing. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying, you know, there's a lot of investment in building internal team coaching capability and building internal talent to support the teams. Finally, technology agility, as we talked about, is the seventh pillar. Where vision and architecture, technical excellence, DevOps, and continuous delivery needs to be top of mind. And so I'm going to pause. I'd love your feedback, but these seven pillars, when we come into a company that says, how am I doing in my overall transformation? What is my strategy? Where should I invest? Instead of just talking about Agile and scaling and DevOps, which is a very technical, sometimes it turns off the business leaders conversation. We talk about business agility. And we talk about how does this resonate from their perspective using non-technical language. And then we do a baseline assessment, obviously, because we measure everything. So let me pause. Reactions, comments, feedback, questions on these 7 areas of investment for an enterprise transformation.
So I want to note that we had a question in the chat from Christina,
Okay.
who was calling out on the previous slide, quality, value, and happiness, that they're very qualitative, and that there are companies that like all quantitative.
I'll hit that right after this. I'm going to talk about how do you combine the other 3 metrics that I showed you, which is maturity, performance, outcomes. Maturity is qualitative, performance is quantitative, outcomes is quantitative. So out of those 3, the only one that's qualitative is maturity, because those are practices and behavior. So I'll give examples of that too, coming up here, Ron.
And if Christina would like to provide any depth behind that, any additional depth behind that.
Christina, would you like to, flow metrics are very quantitative, and value metrics should be quantitative, and even quality metrics are very quantitative. That's the goal of them. While some of the maturity metrics are qualitative, but I could put quantitative metrics behind all those 3. Okay, no problem. We can continue. Any questions or comments about the 7 pillars, the 7 areas of investment for enterprise? All right, so we'll just keep going. So I want you to rank these pillars in terms of importance for your own transformation. Now that I just showed you the 7, I want you to reflect. I really want this to be engaging. So let me turn on the next, one second, the next poll here. And reset results. And go back to, let's go to slido.com, and we're going to go to 62257. When you think about your own company or the company that you're consulting with right now, and you know what issues that they're having, how would you rank these top down? The top 3 to 4 being the ones that you really think they need to focus on right now. And the other ones below, obviously they're all important, but in what way would you rank them top down? So use your phone, go to slido.com. You just basically slide it up and down, these items, and then go ahead and rank the pillars in terms of importance for you, for your transformation, for your company. Slido.com 62257. All right, we're starting to get some responses in. Looks like leadership and culture. is taking the lead in terms of the number 1, followed by organizational and team design. Let's get some more votes. Ooh, customer seat at the table is competing. So some people feel like it's listening to the voice of the customer and understanding their needs is the second priority. We'll wait one more minute, 2 more minutes to get a couple more responses. All right. Customer seat at the table is still number 2 and org design is number 3. But I love that leadership and culture remains in the top. And then interestingly enough, Agile is number 4. Lean portfolio management is number 5, make it stick, and then technology and digital transformation. All right, we got 7 votes so far, 8 votes, and it actually hasn't changed much yet. So you guys are very aligned in the problems that you're facing. I'll give it just 30 more seconds for the final vote to come in case you're working on it. All right, that's it then. We have 9 votes, and leadership and culture, customer seat at the table, org design. Oh, lean portfolio management jumped up. Do you guys see that? So, and you know what's really interesting is lean portfolio management and org design are almost joined at the hip, and they actually are joined to hip from an implementation perspective. When you are rolling out outcome-based planning, almost at the same time, you're thinking about how am I going to align my organization to outcomes? And immediately it's like, well, what is your organization? How are they organized today? So many companies that are doing an LPM transformation are also starting with how am I going to redesign my team? So this is actually pretty good that this showed up here. So how do you accelerate? Because as you can see, this is a multi-year journey. This is not a 6-month thing. And this is not just about adopting Agile, Scrum, and Kanban. This is a true enterprise transformation. Well, our recommendation from our experience is build a transformation strategy. Assess where you are today against those 7 pillars and build a real strategy of what you think you want to do in the next 12 months, and then build it into a quarterly roadmap as well. Assess the maturity and performance at all levels. When I say maturity and performance, I'm talking about qualitative and quantitative. So how are my teams doing? How am I doing from a DevOps perspective? How mature is my product management practices? How is my EBA maturity? And make sure that at minimum, just do the team. Assess your teams and identify their obstacles. What is it that your teams are saying are problems and issues impeding them? I always believe if you listen to the voice of your teams, they'll tell you what's broken. And so we've really been able to take a lot of that, I would say, fluffy kind of emotional feedback and quantify it and organize it and rank it and give it some weight so that leaders actually take action from it. Enable self-learning and growth. Again, you're not gonna be able to do all this if you're gonna try to embed, a coach for every single Agile team. Teams are gonna have to be self-sustained. You're gonna have to figure out how to scale your transformation, how to stand up teams, stabilize teams, optimize them, and then allow them to help themselves or allow them to learn from other teams within the organization and create these toolkits and these wikis and these reusable content that they all can access while on demand requesting coaching support as needed. Aligning your organization to business outcomes and checking in frequently and breaking them down into quarterly OKRs and aligning all the teams to outcomes is a critical part of this. And then talent development, investing in those roles, the role of the manager, the scrum master, the product manager, product owner, and even your program managers or RTEs. Those are very critical roles to your success. Questions or comments about this? This was sort of my 5,000-foot view. And now I'm going to dig a little bit deeper. I'm going to talk about measurement, and I'm going to talk about examples of metrics and what should you measure. So we're going to get a little bit more technical, but any feedback or even experience that you can share around the big picture of enterprise agility?
So Sally, I like your description and your vision for all this, but I'm also struck at the same time with how large this effort is, and therefore, how do you recommend people focus it so it actually results in sustainable change, as opposed to gets bogged down in 7 pillars with 3 items in each pillar?
Yeah, so the 7 pillars and the 3 items, think about them as like the roadmap for the capabilities we need to build over the next few years is how I would present that. So over the next several years, we are going to have to build some muscles within this company related to these areas. And so the baseline assessment allows you to see where you are today. And quite frankly, ask them, and when I say them, is the organization itself that wants to transform. Let me see if I've got a sample of it here. Let me move this. I think I have a sample. Yeah, this one. I want to ask them, this line of business, this portfolio that wants to transform, where are you today? What is your current pain point? What do you have the appetite and what do you have the capacity to work on over the next 12 months? Trying to work on all of this over the next 12 months is overwhelming. And so some companies, I mean, I can even give examples, large financial companies that have come to us said, our pain point right now is there's too much work on the top of the funnel and our teams are overwhelmed. And when you double click on that, you realize, one, they're not doing any customer seat at the table product discovery or validation, and they're not outcome-based. It's like an intake process that's almost automated, which we had to shut down right away. I'm like, that's crazy. You do not want to do strategic intake through an automated intake process. It needs to be more conversation, outcome alignment, actual meetings to understand what the business is looking for. And so this backlog of 3,000 items that needs to get done and the frustration that was lagging between business and technology made them choose customer seat at the table, portfolio management as where they wanted to focus for the next 12 months with specific goals each quarter. And that was what we call the strategic track. They also had a delivery optimization track. And in that track, they had already been implementing Agile for many years. They decided that safe and scaling Agile and DevOps and technical agility were the two things they were going to focus on. And they came up with some specific objectives there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but the goal when you look at where you are today is not to try to solve all of it. The goal is to get a baseline and then say, this is what I want to focus on and why, which one of these areas. You might not be ready for funding and governance. Okay, don't worry about it then. But maybe you have the desire and the capacity to take on outcome-based planning and quarterly planning. And there's momentum around that, which is honestly why I don't believe that any coach or consultant should come from the outside and say, I actually had this meeting today with a big company that says, in what order should we do this? And I said that that's not the right question. The point is to help you assess where you are today, and then you determine, with the facilitation of the consultant, obviously, which of these areas you should focus on and that you have the capacity and the desire to tackle. Does that make sense? Is it Derek that answered, or?
Yeah, thank you. It does. It's focus. You need to really look at where you want to move.
Absolutely. It's very much focus. And this picture is just an image that tells you where you are today and helps you track if you're actually making any traction against where you're trying to improve over time. But very great question. Other comments?
I think a lot of the votes for leadership and culture were not because that's the most important thing, but because that's the hardest thing. Like in my organization, the teams are very mature, agile, aligned with a lot of the pillars. But how do you express it in this way to leadership, to the pillars, the progress, the whole overall? Because what I hear is, I always hear, oh, we're going to scale it, and when they say scale, they mean safe. And it's just so it doesn't hit me as really very agile. But
yeah, so what we do is we always start with a webinar, like what I'm doing for you guys right now. We always start with a webinar on what is business agility, almost exactly what I'm covering for you guys right now. Ahead of the webinar, we normally try to figure out what is this leadership team most interested in out of the 7 pillars, so we can double click on that even more. Are they struggling with outcome-based planning and OKR? I'm going to double click on that a little bit more. Up until this point that I've shown you, this is kind of more of the generic kind of what is business agility and how do you assess it. But some companies are really struggling with customer seat at the table and product management. They're moving from you'll hear them, we're moving from project to product managers, that's a big deal for them. So education and awareness is always step number 1. and then measurement. So if you look underneath this page itself, we've got this, what we call the transformation approach. Like, how do you transform an organization? It always starts with education and learning. So webinars for leaders and also webinars for teams. Then do an EBA baseline, because if you don't even get them to be excited about that journey and they don't even want to see themselves, then heck, don't even worry about the assessment. But if they like that and they say, I wonder where we are today, because we've invested in all of that. Nobody is going to start from scratch. Everything that I just showed you is almost all in progress work. I'm sure all of you can see that in EBA. But where is it that we're at, and which one of these needles are we trying to move in the next 12 months is the strategy and the roadmap. And then where is it that our teams want help and support? So we almost always advocate a top down and a bottom up, or some people call it strategic and then delivery optimization, right? So I got to optimize my strategy and how we're working from the top, and I have to optimize my delivery. So to optimize delivery, you got to figure out how your teams are doing today, do a baseline and listen to them. They will tell you where the obstacles are. To optimize the top, you educate on business agility, you get people excited, you use business language. You can still use SAFe as the implementation. Don't get me wrong, you guys, like, we're strong partners with SAFe, and you can use any other scaling method. The point is, when you're talking to executives, you want to speak in non-framework language. You don't even want to talk about Kanban or story points, honestly. I think that's where I speak to executives all the time. Trust me on this. I don't even bring up story points or burn up charts or Kanban or Scrum or SAFe. Don't use that language. They don't care. Tell me how you're going to solve my business problem. That's what the webinar is about. And that's honestly why we created these 7 pillars, is it's just very neutral, business language. And then when you're actually implementing, heck, roll out whatever your favorite methodology is, you know, the one that resonates with the culture of the company. Does that make sense, Derek?
Yeah, it does. And what you're saying is number 2 here, you don't even roll out. You at first start with generalization and yeah.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly. That's kind of our approach. Yep. Great conversation.
Hey, Sally, we have a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the chat.
I'm not seeing the chat questions for some reason. So yeah, go ahead. Tell me.
How do organizations handle ownership, accountability for accelerating your journey?
Ownership and accountability for accelerating your journey. Okay, so, oops, let me go back over here. Where did I go? Oops, let's go over here. Accelerate this. Okay. I think they're saying ownership and accountability for all of this. That's in front of you over here. I will tell you what I've seen work. I have seen organizations take the journey and give it into swim lanes, almost like subgroups. So usually you'll see, where's my EBA picture again? Let's go back to EBA. Usually what happens is there is a group that's in charge of transforming lean portfolio management and outcome-based planning, and they also have the authority, have the accountability and ownership for organizational structure design, because the PMO, and I hate using that word, but the general traditional PMO had that responsibility of organizational design and alignment to outcomes. So I see that they create a swim lane or a group of people that are aligned to address this within that line of business. I also see that the product group, there's usually groups that are in charge of making sure product management is maturing and there's alignment on outcomes. Sometimes they are part of the same group over here. These first 3 pillars are very strategic pillars. And so you can totally see a strategic group owning and running with that. I see the COEs, like the LACE and some of those centers of excellence that are Agile, owning some of the work that's on Agile and technology and DevOps, and rolling that out from an enablement perspective. Again, I'm just giving you an example of one line of business here. And then I do see a separate group that focuses on leadership and culture and make it stick and talent development together. And usually that's where you've got HR people, talent development people, along with some agilists and strategists. So that's in terms of the ownership. I see it split this way. Many companies today that we work with are creating an enterprise enablement group, an enterprise business agility. I think FedEx actually is now calling it the EBA enablement, but it's an enterprise enablement group. Their job is to enable the enablers, just like that's our job, right? We just enable the enablers. We're not there to go do the work for you, but our job is to enable the enablers. And so they create sort of the model, the measurement, the resources, so that each line of business can begin to transform themselves. That's a very long answer to your question. I don't even know if I hit the mark or not, whoever asked that, if that was what you were asking. Who was it that asked that? Let me go back to the question.
That was Michael.
Michael. Michael, did that answer your question around the ownership and the accountability? Okay.
Yes, he says yes.
Okay, wonderful. All right, great. You guys must be at work. You can't talk. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Is there another question I should? Oh, thank you, Nick. Nick, I appreciate it. Okay, Connie, thanks so much for presenting the content of your hosting. I especially appreciate insights about OR capability. Thanks again. I'm eager to review. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. All right, if there's another question, let me know. Let me take you to the most important part, which is the measurement. How do you use measurement to accelerate this journey? The biggest challenge we have with measurement is alignment on what should I measure? What does good look like? How do I make time to measure? And then, most importantly, how do I take the outcomes of that session and the improvement action items seriously and intentionally make time to grow? Okay, so that's the clarity and alignment on what does good look like, making time to measure, and then actually doing something about it. That is the biggest, that's basically what we do. That's what we've learned in the industry is if you don't make this a program, a continuous improvement, a continuous measurement and growth program, if you just say, hey guys, we're gonna roll out assessments, it's like dead on arrival, right? You tell people, hey, I got some more surveys for you to fill out. Ooh, nobody's exciting to fill out more surveys. So that's, you just don't wanna go there and say, I've got another survey for you to fill out. Measurement should not be taken as a way to just go gather data from people. Continuous improvement is about engaging with the individuals, hearing their voice, seeing the results, and having them commit to action immediately, which is why we use our facilitated format instead of the survey only format, which is, I want to assess how my teams are doing. I'm going to certify my own internal people. They're going to run these measure and grow workshops with the team. And the teams are going to have very open, honest, retrospective conversations, and they are going to commit to action. The team in that same session identifies what one or two things do I want my leaders to help me with. That kind of a very engaging, facilitated retrospective format to measurement is what we recommend. We've tried all the other ones. Trust me, they don't work. So the most important part about measurement is if you ever use the metrics to punish or reward anybody, the teams or their leaders, or give a bonus to the VP, you'll never see the truth again. Why do you guys think that is? If you ever use the results of the measurement activity, which I'll show you here, you'll never see the truth again.
Because you violated trust.
Yep.
You've violated trust.
What gets measured gets manipulated.
Yes. Show me how you'll reward me, I'll show you how I'll behave. You're gonna reward me or you're gonna punish me for being truthful, then I'll never be truthful again, right? You're gonna reward me for saying we're mature, then we'll keep telling you we're mature. So don't monkey with the data is my hashtag, don't monkey with the data. The data that we gather in Agility Health and the data that comes out of these retrospectives is so valuable, and people are being so truthful. And the whole reason that we even certify facilitators is to make it safe, is to create psychological safety for that environment, for people to be open and honest and actually reflect and actually come up with real action plans. So don't monkey with the data. And that is one of the main things that we always talk about when we're rolling out measurement and growth is we teach this principle to the leaders, to the executives above, because they're the ones that monkey with the data. And I will tell you, they don't always mean to. It's just like their instinct is, oh, you show me data, I want to reward and punish now based on that. They think they're doing the right thing, and that's not the right thing. We teach them is if you're looking at the data, the question you should ask is, how can I help? Where can I help? Are there any impediments that I need to remove to help these teams get better? Not who do I need to punish and reward? So
those coming up from engineering, I think kind of know that naturally because they, I come up from engineering and we've been doing that for such a long, we've been doing retrospectives for a long time, and leadership's not quite used to retrospectives. And so, so I can see why that would happen.
yes. So now let me take you into 3 metrics that matter, maturity, performance, outcomes. And the only metric that really matters is outcomes and OKR but we're not there yet as an industry. We're not there. Teams don't know what these are. They're not aligned to them. Leaders, I would say business leaders don't even know how to create them the right way. So we've got a couple of years to mature on that. But maturity is practices and behaviors, right? Qualitative. Performance is quantitative. How much did you get done for me? When did it get it done? How frequent is it? What's my, test automation ratio? What's my predictability? What's my throughput? Those are great questions. Those are performance. Outcomes in OKR is, was this even worth it? Was this valuable? Did we make a dent from a business perspective? Why did we even invest in this outcome? And did the people that invested $10 million in this outcome achieve any of the results that they were hoping for? That's the third metric that matters. For those of you that follow SAFE, you'll see that, thank God now, and I say thank God because anything that SAFE publishes now gets adopted by a lot of the large enterprises, but this is now the same recommendation from Scaled Agile, which is you need to measure competence, flow, and outcomes, which is basically maturity, performance, and outcomes. So that is wonderful, which is we're all in the industry getting aligned around those three metrics that matter, and that those are the three types of metrics that we need to measure. If you guys don't mind, before I ask you, I want to just share with you an example of what it looks like, because a lot of people say, this is theoretical to me, make it real. So I'm going to share with you, when I talk about outcomes in OKR, I'm assuming that most of you guys are familiar with outcomes in OKR. What does that look like? So let's say this is the name of the company, and let's say these are portfolios. Under portfolios, there are product lines, and under your product lines, there are teams. At the highest level of the company, I need to know what are my 3-year outcomes, 1-year outcomes, quarterly outcomes. That's what we call our demand. Demand is what we are hoping to get done, what we want to get done. Capacity or alignment is who's going to own these outcomes for me. Well, if I'm the enterprise, outcomes are going to be owned by my children, and my children are portfolios. If I am a portfolio, just want to make sure, because when you guys, we all talk about alignment, but I think we don't know what that really means. If I'm a portfolio and I have my 1-year outcomes and my quarterly outcomes, who's going to own those? Well, it's going to be the product lines underneath me. If I'm a product line and I have my 1-year outcome, a quarterly outcome, well, who's going to own those? They're going to be the Agile teams that are underneath me. As you get from the top to the bottom, and as you get from 3-year to 1-year to quarterly, the outcomes here, the outcomes in the OKRs here have a lot more what we call impact metrics, which is lagging indicators. And as you get closer to quarterly, you're going to see maybe one impact metric, but mostly leading indicators. So let me pause here and make sure I answer any questions about OKRs. I'm sure you guys have had 100 presentations on OKRs, but this is an example of how we implement that, which is there is an objective. The objective has a hypothesis statement. We believe that by investing in XYZ for ABC persona, we will achieve, XYZ results. How will you measure the key results? And from these key results, which one is an impact metric and which one's a leading indicator? An impact metric means it's lagging. Leading means it's something that's within our control. We get questions here, comments, feedback around alignment.
What are the best resources for creating great OKRs?
Learning resources, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, so we are big fans of Felipe Castro. So there's a couple of areas I'll send you to. One of them is you can watch some of the videos on agilevideos.com, and I think one of them is actually open on business agility, and we have several videos there on outcomes and OKR. So on agilevideos.com, if you scroll down and go to Enterprise Business Agility, view course, there are 2 or 3 that are about outcomes or OKRs. And then I'm going to send you to Felipe Castro's. Okay, this is not coming up for me right now quickly. Let me just go to Felipe Castro real quickly. Felipe Castro. FelipeCastro.com. Love his work. And please, anybody else who recommends anybody else, just send it in the chat. So I'm not saying it's only, but I love, we've met Felipe, he's done OKR training for us many years ago. So he is somebody that we absolutely love and adore in terms of that. One of the things we learned ourselves when we're implementing our OKR dashboard for customers is that we ourselves have to roll out and we provide our training. But I want to show you something here that's important is when you're learning about outcomes, step number 1 is creating and aligning and planning with outcomes. And these are sort of the steps to that. And a lot of people stop there. Like they learn how to build outcomes and they learn maybe how to align the teams, but then they don't realize that there is a set it and forget it syndrome that happens right now. Set it and forget it is where you do all this, you create them, and then nobody reviews them until the next quarter. remember to operationalize outcomes. Remember that you need to track them. You need to reprioritize your capacity against them. You need to update your insights and learning from these outcomes, and then you need to demo the outcomes at the end of the quarter. So I don't know, that's again another long answer to your question, but is that helpful?
How frequently
Yes,
do you need to do steps 1, 2, and 3 of those last 4? The last 4 was quarterly review, but
you want to teach your organization how to do this continuously: prioritization, outcome-based tracking, insights and learning. So prioritization and capacity management is, what happens is you all align around outcomes and then new stuff starts coming in. So we call it backlog refinement. But in that backlog refinement, we need to align our backlog to the outcomes again, and we need to start checking against those outcomes. Or if we are going to deviate away from the original outcomes, we need to talk about why are we doing that, and do we really have the capacity? So I would say the only way to operationalize this is if you can embed it in your existing meetings and existing ceremonies. An example is the demo. Every Agile team does a demo, right? You guys, you do a sprint review at every 2 weeks. I would like for Agile teams to insert 2 minutes of, hey, our outcomes for this quarter, how far did we get along? Is there any key result that we can update? That does not take that long, because let me tell you, Agile teams do not own 5, 10 outcomes. They're gonna have like one outcome card with maybe 2 to 3 key results. So can you embed within your demos a quick review of your outcomes and a quick movement of any of the key metrics? And I bet you maybe the first couple of sprints, not a lot has changed on the leading indicators, but then maybe after that. So the answer to your question, Ron, how frequently do we do this? I would say embed these within your current cadence of planning and review and demoing. But at the end of every quarter, pausing to generate insights and learning, not about the work that you got done, but about the outcomes. And did we even pick the right metrics? And, you know, were these even the right things to focus on? So we call it, so let's say this was the metrics that we wanted, you know, add some comments. Maybe it wasn't even the right metric. Maybe it was too ambitious of a goal. Maybe the leading indicator was not a good leading indicator for that impact metric. I would say this is a new muscle that most of us have not developed yet from an outcome-based planning. Would you guys agree?
yeah, I think when you bring up set and forget, it reminds me of New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, exactly. I want to lose 20 pounds and then set it and forget it. Yeah. So
next December 31st.
Yeah, and if you hit 80% of it, then you're good.
You know, and it's just like, what are we good with? What are we okay with? But getting down to, and by the way, when we created this dashboard, we created it because we had created a very physical board called the Enterprise Visibility Room, where teams were the columns and the demand was all of the outcomes, and teams visually using cards were all aligned to outcomes. And that experiment worked so well in so many companies, but people kept telling us, this is not scalable. We can't keep this room for you. How am I people that are remote going to access it? I mean, there was just so much very valid comments around that's not scalable. The point, though, is of an outcome alignment tool, whatever you use, whether it's a physical board, whether it's this Kanban, whether it's your own Kanban board, is let everybody have access to it. Okay, you're not aligned on outcomes if I can't see the other organization's outcome. We should not just see our own outcomes, but I should be able to see, what is the company working on this year? What is my portfolio trying to achieve this year? And what is my program or my product line? The whole point of it is visibility and transparency. I'm going to take you now, because I shared with you there are 3 metrics that matter: maturity, performance, outcomes. Okay, so we talked about outcomes. I want to take you into performance. Performance is the next thing over. So again, same conversation. I've got my portfolio, I've got my product teams, I've got all of that. How can I see how they're doing from an overall agility perspective? And agility is maturity and performance. What does maturity mean? Maturity is the qualitative data of how a team is doing. So how are all of our 8 teams doing over here? Do they have clarity? Is it the right culture, the right foundation, the right leadership, the right performance? So those are quantitative metrics, and I'm sure you guys have all seen our radars. Performance is quantitative metrics. So there was a lady earlier that said leaders only want to see quantitative metrics. Well, that's right here. We need to teach leaders that they can't only see this. Right? Our role as transformation agents is to teach leaders that you have to see quantitative, which is wonderful. Here it is: deployment frequency, throughput, MTTR, predictability. Qualitative, which is maturity. And then leaders, you need to ask the question of what can I do to help? So metrics without action is worthless data. Any dashboard where you're just showing the measurement, but you're not showing what to do about it is worthless data. So now I can have a conversation and say, hey, the teams are working on these growth items. These are areas that they're trying to improve on themselves. Organizational growth items are management level impediments and issues that we need to resolve. And hey, senior leaders, here's your backlog of what you can do to help us improve. Again, you don't even have to use this. I'm giving you the concept of when you measure and you expose results, you need to immediately show the action plan and what can we do at the management level, what can they do at the enterprise level, at the executive level, and what do teams need to do? We need to shift away from just showing dashboards just to show dashboards and not immediately attaching and what are we doing about it to get better. Does this make sense, you guys? What I'm trying to share with you here, which is the visualization of maturity, next to it performance, next to it outcome, but at every level. I'm clicking at every level. I can go up to the portfolio, I can go down to a product line, or I can go down to the team and say, show me, where are we and what can I do to help?
Yes, this makes sense.
Wonderful. Great. I think I've gone so deep. I'm sure you guys are like all tired now, but I'm going to just give you a little bit more on outcome-based planning. Would that make sense? Outcome and OKR-based planning? Or we can just wrap it up and I can take questions. What would you like?
Go for outcomes.
Go for outcomes? You guys are good? Just go a little bit, just kind of a double click on outcomes. All right, let's do it. Okay, LPM. Everybody's talking about lean portfolio management, right? Everybody wants to, adopt lean portfolio management. There's a lot to LPM. There's a lot to lean portfolio management. What is my strategy and my North Star and what am I going to invest? How much am I going to invest? Who is my lean portfolio management team? How often are they going to meet and what tools are they going to use? What are my outcomes? Where are my outcomes? What are my 3-year outcomes, my 1-year outcomes, and my quarterly outcomes? How will I do exactly what I just showed you? How will I align everybody towards these outcomes? How will I make sure that as new work comes in, we are doing value-based prioritization and business value pointing so that we can continue to align around these outcomes? How will I do demand and capacity management? How can I get transparency to the obstacles and remove them? Where am I going to measure and how am I going to measure? How can I check in on these outcomes and how can I make sure I've shifted my funding and governance? Is this simple or hard, what I've got here?
No, it's pretty simple.
Check, 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 right?
Yep.
Check, check, check. So as you go through and think about how are we going to do this, one of the most key areas is, having a strategy. Because I will be honest with you, a lot of people that struggle to define their outcomes, they don't even have a strategy from an executive perspective. They really haven't sat down to think about how are we going to win in the market. When I say strategy, that's what I want an executive team to answer is how will you win in this market? What are your biggest roadblocks? What are your competitors doing? What is the right business model for you to be in? What is impeding you internally and slowing you down? How will you take advantage of digital everything, right? If you don't even have a strategy and a North Star, it's hard for us to work on outcomes because what they end up doing is somebody's like, oh, we're going to implement outcome-based planning. So let me show you my backlog of 100 projects and let me create an OKR for each one of them. What do you guys think that is? When I say I want to adopt outcome-based planning and somebody gives me the backlog of 100 deliverables, and they're now going to put a little bit of lipstick on it. I call it lipstick on a pig, but they're going to take each one of those deliverables and say, oh, here's the objective and here's the key result. Here's the objective and here's the key result. What are we doing?
Well, it sounds output-based to me.
We're justifying our output plan. Does that make sense? We're justifying the very big output plan. Have we reduced capacity? Are we going to help with capacity at all by doing that? No. Are we aligning to strategy? No. Are we making sure that these things are going to do? No, you're basically saying, look, I'm going to do this work anyway, can you please just see how we're going to measure the work that we're going to do? And what are they going to be the key results? That's a different problem to solve than what is my strategy and what are the right outcomes that will help me get to that strategy? And then only show me the related deliverables and projects and work that helps me achieve a key result. So one of them is very strategic focused and saying, let's do the minimum amount of work that will achieve the key results. And the other one is very output focused of let me justify all the work that I have on my backlog right now. And that is what I'm talking about here, which is when you look at your organization, there are teams. They're aligned to teams of teams. Teams of teams are aligned to a portfolio and portfolio aligned to the enterprise. You guys understand those? That's the same left navigation I showed you in our platform. Okay. What we are so good at right now is I have a big business plan. I'm going to break it down into projects and epics. I'm going to break the projects and the epics into features. I'm going to break the features into stories. We're all going to align around that. We're going to align around the work. I want us to think about the strategy, which is the 3-year outcomes. We typically do have this, by the way. Every company I go into has a 3-year outcomes. They will tell you from a very quantifiable perspective, what are those long-term goals they're trying to achieve? Market penetration, revenue, revenue increase, cost reduction, yada, yada, yada. They're very big, they're very ambitious, and they're long-term. Do we break these down into yearly outcomes, not yearly initiatives? When you start to show me a list of initiatives, you're going here. Initiatives. When you show me your 3 to 5, maximum 6 yearly outcomes, you're here. Do you know how to take those yearly outcomes for each portfolio and break them down into quarterly outcomes with a lot of leading indicators? I will safely tell you that 95% of our customers don't know how to do that. Even the ones that have adopted outcome-based planning will stick at the yearly level. But moving down from a yearly outcome to a quarterly outcome is very painful and difficult. And I will say that it's very similar to when we were trying to teach people how to write stories, and they were only used to writing features and epics, business leaders. But I want this whole feature. And then the only thing the team knew how to do is take the feature and break it down to tasks. Do you guys remember those days where everybody just wanted to write the development task, the testing task, the front-end design task, it was all tasks. And we're like, no, there's this thing called stories. And stories is in the middle, right? It's a little bit of chunk of value. And it can be done within a sprint. And we had to start the whole education on what is a story. It's very similar to creating an outcome. An outcome is a small piece of value that can be delivered within a quarter, that does have some leading indicators that tell me if we're going to achieve the yearly outcome. But it's very hard. So the reason I like to show this is because people think they're doing this, but when you really ask them what they're doing, you're going to see that check, they're doing this one. Some companies are doing yearly outcomes. Almost many, if not all, are not doing quarterly outcomes or team level outcomes, and they're not aligning teams this way. From a budget perspective, we want to have a budget at the company level. We want to invest in different portfolios. We want that investment in different portfolios to translate into investing in teams' capacity. Remember that we're not going to invest in projects. We're going to invest in stable teams that are going to deliver outcomes, right? Right now, the funding is all based on the projects. You guys see that the funding is very, what's happening over here? Did I get it? Did I not get it? In the future, the funding is going to be who are my stable teams and am I getting outcomes or not? Do you see that little shift there? I'm not saying we don't want to look at work and projects, but I'm just saying funding is going to be less about my project started and ended, and this is what I'm funding, and it's going to be more, I've got stable teams, and these are the outcomes, that they achieve the outcomes or not. Let me pause. I've said a lot. It's getting late in the day. Does this resonate? Any questions? I like using pictures because I think they tell 1,000 words.
Well, it was a good description of where our OKRs break down from the 1-year outcomes to the quarterly outcomes.
Mm-hmm. Very common. You're not alone. 95% of our customers are there.
It's good stuff.
Okay, good. All right. You guys are all awake and with me. You know the difference between an outcome and an output. This is from Felipe Castro. So this is a great bucket image that he has around an outcome is like this, an output is like this. I think you all know the difference, but please keep reminding yourself that an output is something that you can say yes and no to. Did it get done? Did it not get done? If that's what you're asking, if something got done and not done, it's probably an output. If you've got a metric with an actual number and you're seeing if did we deliver value, did it work, was it effective, did people use it, did people like it, did we improve because of it, then those are outcome metrics. And I know that's very basic, but test it, nail it, scale it. I mentioned this in the video, and I wanted to take you just a little bit deeper in that when you're creating outcomes, let's just say you came to me this year and we are building a new customer portal for customers to be able to download their information digitally. And our hypothesis is that we believe that by creating this central customer portal for our healthcare company and company, users being able to download their blah, 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 we will achieve higher engagement, better efficiency, and more customer satisfaction. Okay, great. What I want you to do is if you've never built that portal before, don't come up with the plan, the scale it outcome. Come up with the tested outcome. So I'm going to ask you guys right now, how would you test that experiment? I want a portal, medical records, whatever customer portal where customers will be able to self-service. Give me, what can I do in the next quarter or in the next 6 months to just test that baby?
You mean as far as A/B testing and getting customer feedback?
Sure. What would you do if I told you, Derek, I'm going to give you $10 million over the next 2 years to build me this portal? And I just said, what would you do in the next quarter? How would you test that? What would you do? Would you start building it right away? Scott's here. What's up, Scott?
I was thinking that, I'd take prototypes in front of customers. I mean, doing A/B testing is awesome, but that's also the most expensive test you could possibly do, right? I've had to build it. To do that, how can I get some input before I get to building?
Wonderful. In the next quarter, our outcome will be to get feedback. And it's okay if you guys say it's going to take the whole 3 months just to build the prototype. No problem, I get it. But I would actually argue that it doesn't take 3 months to build a prototype. I would say you're building too big of a prototype if it's going to take you 3 months to build it. From this prototype of this portal, what are the key pages that you think are the highest value MVP that you're going to take to market? Prototype that super quickly, do a 5-day sprint on that bad boy, get some customer feedback. Are you guys familiar with the 5-day sprint? The 5-day sprint. So like day 1 and 2, you're really understanding the problem, you're prototyping it, you're bringing in experts in day 3, they're giving you feedback, you're bringing in stakeholders. Day 4 on Thursday, you're bringing in customers, they're actually like maybe even clicking on stuff. Remember, it's all fake prototyping, but it looks real. But they're actually clicking on stuff, they're testing it, they're giving you, and then you're making a decision by day 5, what would you go build? So that's what I mean by our outcome for the next quarter would be very much around testing our hypothesis using a prototype and maybe engaging 5 to 10 to 15 customers to even identify what is the first MVP. And is this even valuable or not valuable? Is it even solving the right problem for them? Then the next quarter, I'd nail it. And so actually build the first MVP, right? Put it in front of customers quickly with the lowest cost that I can possibly do. Maybe not even like move it to like production, you know what I mean? Whatever test environment, get them to play with it, get feedback, and then scale it. As opposed to what we do today is we build the plan for the 2-year portal and we build our outcomes for when we move this to production to the market. What is it going to look like? Do you guys understand this point? This is a very critical point.
Yeah, sounds like waterfall to me.
Right. It is waterfall, but we don't see it that way because we're executing it agile, Ron. Because our plan has been executed to 2-week sprints, we think we're doing agile, but our outcomes are waterfall outcomes. That's actually a wonderful way of putting it.
If I may, that's so waterfall is not just the same thing as a sequence. Waterfall is a very particular way to divide work on any product or system or solution. So in this case, it is a sequence, but there's nothing bad about sequences. It's just like when you eat a food, you put it on a plate, then you cut it, and then you eat it. You can't somehow not do it in a sequence.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. When I said this is waterfall thinking is I want to see the big bang result at the end. I'm not willing to see small value iteratively. That's kind of not really the sequential nature of it, because all this stuff has to be sequentially done. But the waterfall mentality of being okay, creating an outcome card that shows you the big bang result, and not creating another outcome card that shows you small iterative delivery of value each quarter.
Yeah, we're saying the same thing. I was just defending the fact that this is not waterfall. This is a sequence, but it doesn't make it a waterfall thing.
Absolutely.
And waterfall is not an insult, by the way.
We've used so many years shifting people away from that waterfall mentality that, you know, for some people, they probably do consider it and waterfall and agile is less about the sequencing and more about the way of thinking. When do you want to see value? You know what I mean? How are you going to operate? How are you going to deliver towards that value? Okay, here's an example of an outcome card, but I already showed you guys that in the platform. So there's always a title, a hypothesis, a key result. If you put this little thing on and again, it's a PowerPoint deck, you guys can do the same. An impact metric means it's something that's the final impact, and then a leading indicator doesn't have that. You do need to differentiate between leading versus impact metrics, and you do need to update this regularly, maybe every 2 weeks, once a month, and make sure that this is part of existing ceremonies where we are checking in on our outcomes and our OKRs. Scaled Agile also has some really good examples around maybe how you would, at the quarterly level, the PI level, use PI objectives as some of the outcomes. You know, some of these still, to me, look like deliverables, but they're at least putting business value point on that deliverable from a customer's perspective. So that's definitely a little bit better, especially when you get down to the team level. I already showed you this. Yep. So let's see. And I already showed you this, which is the step-by-step. If I was rolling out outcome-based planning, how would I create and align teams to outcomes and then track, improve, and actually make sure that we really are updating the outcomes. From a lessons learned on outcome-based planning, start with strategic outcomes. Quarterly outcomes are hard, very difficult, but they're easier to get over time. They're just like writing stories. I really want you to go back to when everybody was struggling to write stories and they wanted to write either a task or a feature or an epic. That's exactly how you're going to feel with quarterly based outcomes. Think about that question that I gave you. What is your goal for the next quarter? Is it to test something? Is it to nail it? Or is it to scale it? That should guide how you write the outcome and the key results. Don't cascade outcomes. So Felipe Castro will tell you that as well. Don't have the leaders above create their outcomes, assign it down to the next level. They assign it down. We want to align, we want to co-create outcomes together. We want to define them definitely like 2 layers together. You know, the team of team and the portfolio layer align on outcomes. The team of team and the team level align on outcomes, and then make sure you actually update them. In terms of maturity, assessing maturity, which is the qualitative metrics, we assess at different levels. At the team level, we measure team health. At the team of team level, we measure DevOps and product. And at the enterprise level, we do the EBA assessment. For individuals, we love some of those role-based radars that we've got. So Scrum Master, Product Owner, Product Manager. Why do we do radars? We do them just because visually they help people understand where they are. That's pretty much it. They also help you see if there's any patterns, if there are multiple teams that are struggling with the same thing. So you can roll them up. That's pretty much it. It's just a visual way to see a lot of data in one. Something that came out of our recent research, because we have a lot of data in Agility Health, is we actually was wondering, performance. Companies want teams to be high performing from a quantitative perspective. Do you guys remember that came up earlier? I want performance. I want quantitative metrics. What do they have to invest in? There's a lot of stuff over here. These are a lot of practices. But what are the practices on the left side that actually led to high-performing teams in our database? So I'm going to ask you guys before I tell you, we evaluated 4,600 teams, which is about 46,000 people. And we looked at the highest performing teams in our platform. And again, this is all customer data. This is real data. It's not like free, you know, fill out this assessment online for free. This is actual real Agile teams. And we looked at the ones that had the highest rating on predictability, time to market, quality, value delivery, responsiveness to change. Those were all quantitative metrics. Okay, so the data we looked at was that. Remember when I showed you on our dashboard, we have quantitative metrics? That's the data. What do you think were the practices that those teams were following that led to high performance? I'm just curious. If you guys had to just guess which Agile practices, and let me see if people are commenting probably now in the chat. Let me open that up. Response to change. Being responsive to change. Yep, it's great. What else? Christina's got one. What other Agile practice do you think led to the highest performing teams delivering? Managing their WIP. So I would say, Elena, managing WIP is almost like the ability to plan effectively and manage. Response to change, then predictability. Okay, so think about these are the final outcomes, but what were the Agile practices, the maturity practices that led to that? Retrospectives, okay. Transparency and communication with what's written. Okay, great, awesome. All right, I'm gonna share now. I won't keep you waiting. Number one was weekly iteration. Weekly iteration planning and the team's ability to plan in small increments and be very focused on delivering in small increments came out as number one. It actually had a direct impact to 4 or 5 of those. So what I'm telling you is if you are trying to invest on where should I focus with this team to help them improve, getting them very good at that practice of iteration, planning, and breaking things down was number one. Number two, T-shaped individuals on the team. T-shaped individuals, generalizing specialists, meant that the people on this team, so let's just take it step by step. This team that I formed knows how to break down their work into very small increments. Now empowered and enabled them to all do whatever they need to do to get the work done. You did not silo them in, well, you're a back-end developer, you're a front-end developer, you can't do this and you can do that. You are allowing people to be generalizing specialists. So teams that had the highest level of generalizing specialists also delivered faster and higher performing. Planning and estimating was number 3. Breaking down the work, sizing it, and planning it based on capacity. So the lady, whoever come up with it said WIP, managing work in progress, and planning and estimating. Who was that up over here? Elena. You were absolutely right. Ed is answering how many people in these high-performing teams. Most of our Agile teams in AgilityHealth are about 10, plus or minus about 10 people. And this group of people was about 46,000 team members that we looked across them, 4,600 teams. Planning and estimating was the next one. Yes. Oh, hallelujah. I was going to like throw a party when I saw this one show up. I was like, no way, no way. I have data now, data and evidence to tell leaders that enabling their teams to be creative and to solve problems on their own actually leads to high-performing teams. Yay, it's no longer theoretical. I've got statistics to back this up now. Teams that were allowed to be creative and innovative and to solve problems were higher performing than other teams. And then here's my big hallelujah, self-organization. Teams that had a strong ability to self-organize and make decisions themselves. You know, I could have like honestly designed this myself if I wanted to put what my wish list is, but this is what came out of the data. This is what came out of the data. We looked at across those 4,600 teams, show me the top 20% high performing teams. So this is how this came up. Top 20% high performing teams. And then we worked backwards and said, show me from a correlation analysis. So we hired University of Nebraska at Omaha, their organizational psychology division, and they did what they call a metrics correlation within our radar, what impacts what or what drives what. And then they took all of the metrics that drive performance and said, okay, are they real or are they not? The good news is that the teams that invested in these were 37% higher performing than teams that did not. That was the bottom line result, is teams that had invested, not theoretical, reality, in improving weekly iteration planning, having T-shaped individuals, really strong on planning and estimating, being very creative and enabled for solutions, and be self-organizing, were 37% higher performance from a quantitative perspective. Again, I'm not talking about wishy-washy stuff. Quantitative performance. What am I talking about quantitative performance? This metric over here. These are the quantitative metrics we were gathering. Do you guys see those? So throughput, deployment frequency, MTTR is mean time to recover, predictability, defect ratio, cycle time, test automation, change failure rate. So we're not talking about foo-foo stuff here. These things that you see over here, all those metrics I showed you align to those. That's what we found. Isn't that cool? I thought this was super cool. Like, I'm a data nerd, and just being able to prove to leaders from a data perspective that these are areas we have to invest in. And I love that generalizing specialist, creativity, innovation, self-organization are all about empowering people. Do you guys notice that? Because being T-shaped is about letting people do things outside of their specialty and their role, which requires empowerment. Creativity and innovation requires empowerment. Self-organization requires empowerment. Planning and estimating and weekly iterations is directly from the book, right? So those are actual agile practices. But the other ones, I would say, are more cultural values. Do you guys agree? All right. So that brings us to the conclusion. Where do I start from here? Where do you guys go? How do you do this within your own organization? EBA webinar. Start with some level of a webinar for your executives and leaders on what is business agility, and bring your business and your technology leaders together. Then, if they're interested, see if they want to do a baseline assessment to where they are today. Build a strategy for 2022. Everybody's thinking about it right now. What are we going to do in 2022 to transform? Right? Everybody's thinking about perfect timing. And then, of course, as I mentioned, get a baseline across your teams. Listen to the voice of your teams, because you're going to need to remove obstacles for them. I certainly hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope I wasn't going too deep or too technical. If you complete this survey, which I can send you right over here, you will get the slide deck that I have over here. There was a couple of slides I had to skip over for time purposes. But if you can complete the survey, let us know how we did. I can send you the slides as well. Q&A, more questions.
Oh, so there's a question from Michael here asking about the iteration times. Was weekly fairly common, and what other iteration times were in the data set?
Most of our customers, I will say, are on the 2-week iterations, honestly, the 2-week sprints. Just most of our customers are large enterprises, very large, right? So we've got large banks, you know, a lot of the, you know, the Nikes, Bloomberg, you know, a lot of these are our customers. So most of them are 2-week sprints in terms of the sprint cadence.
But the 1-week one stood out.
The one, where did you see 1-week iterations?
In your teams that scored the highest. You said weekly iterations, team ability to plan and deliver.
Oh, sorry. No. I didn't mean by weekly iterations that it was 1 week. I meant that sprinting in weekly increments, so 2 weeks. So I don't want anybody to misunderstand that. Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Elena. And thank you, Christina. I don't want anybody to misunderstand that. It wasn't the size of the iteration. It was that whole competency on our radar is called weekly iterations, which is basically about sprinting in 2-week increments or 3-week increments.
So frequent iterations.
Frequent iterations.
Or short iterations.
Or short iterations, yes. Thank you, Derek. Other questions, comments before we conclude?
There was another one here from Ed. How many people were on high performing teams?
About 10. About 10.
And is that an average, or is that a
average?
There's this whole question around team size.
Yes.
But, that's coming from me, not from Ed. But
it's an average across our teams. It was really interesting that 4,600 teams ended up being about 46,000 some like a number, because when people are coming to us and they're even setting up their agile teams, we highly advocate that they set them up in teams of 10 or less. So some teams go a little bit more and some teams go a little bit less, but the average is about 10 per team. The feedback link in the chat. Yes, Jerome, here's the webinar evaluation. Yes. Are you guys familiar with the Fist of 5? Have you guys played that? 5 means I loved it. 4 means I liked it. 3 means I'm on the fence, but it was okay. 1 and 2 is, gosh, I didn't get value from this. Can everybody that's here, give me a quick Fist of 5 in the chat? I always like to reflect and see if, okay, great. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, great. I just want to make sure that we have delivered value, educated you, gave you something new that you're excited and inspired by. And I hope that you guys take what you've learned today and start, bringing it to your own companies, this concept of business agility and enterprise agility and measurement, and how do we get this started, and how do you have a much more holistic plan using language of the business. Don't use technical language. Don't throw at them all the terminology that they're going to be confused by. So Ron, thank you so much for inviting me. Do you have any other closing thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much, Sally, for yet another really insightful presentation. A lot of thoughts and a lot of thoughtfulness went into that, and we really appreciate it.
No problem. And I just sent my email in case anybody has more questions or wants to follow up. Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the evening, and I will see you in another seminar in the future.
And we'll see you all again next month.